Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Untangle Tech Talk series. Today we'll be showcasing the installation and configuration process of the Untangle NG Firewall solution. My name is Shannon Miles. I'm part of the product marketing team here, and I'll be your host today. I have with us John Coffin, our Director of QA, and he will be doing the demonstration and answering any questions that you guys have along the way. Just a few housekeeping rules before we get started. If you have any audio issues, please just be sure to use the audio panel on the right-hand side to select your preference. If you select to use a phone, you will need to dial in and use the access code provided. Just a reminder, this webinar is being recorded, so you'll have the option to rewatch or revisit areas that you need to follow up on. We'll be answering questions throughout the presentation, so please submit them through the Q&A chat box, and also you can at any time send questions to sales@untangle.com or support@untangle.com. So before I move forward, just want to reiterate, this is a very highly technical webinar. If you're not familiar with the Untangle solution or networking concepts, this probably isn't the right webinar for you, and I would suggest you take a look at our 101 webinar series that cover more high-level topics, and you can find a full list of our upcoming webinars and past webinars on our website. And with that, I'll pass it over to John.
Thanks, Shannon. Thanks everyone for joining us. We should be able to help you integrate your Untangle into your network with this webinar. Some of the first things you need to decide before installing Untangle in your network is what type of mode you're going to have your Untangle. There's two modes, router and bridged. And you can actually change this after you've installed it if you wish to. But really, it comes, a lot of people, there's a lot of confusion on this part. Router mode is a little more complex to set up. It provides a little more control over your network. Bridge mode is much easier to install in your existing network. But there are limitations on some of the routing and more advanced networking that you can do in bridge mode. So that's a couple things. Now when you decide, really the simplest question you can ask is, do I have a public IP address? If the answer is yes, you're going to use router mode. If you're going to use an internal address that's going to be behind a main firewall, or maybe your ISP provides a firewall modem combination and they don't give you a public IP address, you're going to choose bridge mode. And I'll kind of cover the differences at the very end on what you can and cannot do if you're in router or bridge mode. As you can see right here, Untangle is really an online device, so it needs to be in line with the traffic streaming out to the internet. It's not designed to be a proxy where it will redirect traffic. And let's see. So the first thing I'm going to go through is just the setup wizard. So you've downloaded Untangle from our web, went ahead and started the network wizard to install the software on your hardware. And then once on the first reboot, you're going to come up with a setup wizard. And I will actually have one right here. So this is where you're going to be after you've installed Untangle and gone through the hardware configuration. This is when you start choosing how you want to configure your Untangle. The first is just introduction. The next is you're going to set the admin password, and this is kind of critical, especially if you're in router mode and you have a public IP address. By default, Untangle does not open any ports or any interfaces out to the internet. But you may wish to manage your Untangle remotely, like off-site or from a home, and you have this at your business. So you want to actually put a pretty decent password. I recommend pretty much something over 8 characters with special characters and so forth. So for this time, I'm actually putting a pretty simple password. The admin email is where you want to receive alerts or the reports from it. You can configure this later on. or you can assign it later. So right now I'm just going to go ahead and put my email in there so I don't have to configure this later. And you set the time zone. This is where your device is going to, the software is going to check to see what network cards are available and what NICs. As you can see in this one, I have, let's see here, this one has 6 network interfaces, and 2 of them are wireless because they're labeled WAN and WLAN and WLAN 1. So I have 2 hard connections and 2 wireless ones in this case. This is kind of crucial that you check, especially if you're going to go in either router or bridge, that you check to see that you have it plugged in correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and unplug my LAN network. As you can see, I currently have 2 green lines. That means these 2 are connected to the network. So if I unplug my LAN side, which is the internal, and just wait a few seconds, you'll see the light goes off. So that tells me I have my internal LAN network plugged into the right port on my Untangle. So I'll plug that back in. And in a few minutes it will come back up. Great. So I have it plugged in correctly. I can proceed. So if you have a public IP, you're going to want to put this as static. If you're going to do something like, if you're just going to get an IP address from your ISP's modem, so forth, you'll set it to DHCP. Either way is fine, depending on what your ISP has given you. And right now, the Untangle is going to check to make sure those are valid IP addresses. Also checks to see if it has access to the DNS server. It also sees if we can contact Untangle itself for getting updates. Here's what we talked about before. We're going to choose we're going to be in router or bridge mode. And again, it really depends if you have a public IP address or not. If you do, you're going to want to pick router. You're going to want to put a different network for your internal LAN because you're going to do a translation between the outside and the inside. It also will block in traffic. If it's transparent, your internal NIC is going to be bridged to your external, so it makes one continuous connection to your network, and traffic will just basically pass through, and we will view the traffic as it's passing through. In this case, I'm going to choose router. And next is we want to check to see if when Untangle releases new software, we automatically send it out. And usually we space it out over about 30 days for the next version. If you like to have the latest version at all times and really don't want to worry about it, just click Install Upgrades automatically. If you like to schedule your upgrades more readily, you really want to use something and then schedule it at some particular time. You want to say don't install upgrades automatically. The key thing is you'll still get the automatic updates for the virus checkers. You'll get the automatic updates for the web filter and any minor bug fixes, but you won't be upgraded to the next major version until you do it manually. There's an area, and I'll cover that, on how to upgrade manually. So in this case, I'm going to say I'm going ahead and just install automatically. And let's see. We'll just go to the next one. So now we have our Untangle. Now we have to go ahead and configure our Untangle store account to go with it. Even if you're installing the free, go ahead and open a store account for 2 things. It makes it easier to track all your different Untangles by going to the store, even if you're not purchasing anything. But also, if you want to purchase one of our paid applications, it makes it a lot easier if the server is already in our store database. So I'll click Continue. I already have an account, so I'm going to go ahead and put my store account in here. It's just my email and then my password. You can tell I like long passwords. So now I can open my account, and if, let's say I had a previous Untangle that I'm not using anymore, I could transfer the licenses to this one. I could go ahead and pre-purchase some applications to install on this one, or I could just go ahead and skip it, and we want to use my Untangle. And let's see, okay, we're done with the registry. A couple questions. Are there pros and cons to the transparent mode? So, you know, I kind of went over it in the very beginning, but transparent bridge is much easier to install in your network. It's pretty much you unplug your current connection to your firewall, drop Untangle in, plug one side to your existing firewall and the other side to your existing LAN, and then just configure the filters as you wish. The problem is OpenVPN is very hard to configure in transparent mode. You also have to make changes to your existing firewall to allow OpenVPN connections to come in and direct it. You're going to have to do quite port forwards if you want to remotely administrate the Untangle. It makes it where there's two places that you have to configure everything. There are some limitations. You can't do really routing on your Untangle if you're in bridge mode. A couple things like that. You know, a full step-by-step, really the only difference in the steps I just did going through the router mode is you're going to choose transparent mode, and you won't have an internal IP address to enter. It's really that simple. There's really no differences. Let's see here. I will go ahead, and I recommend, especially if you're your first time, go ahead and install the recommended apps. Just takes a few minutes, and they'll install trial versions of all the paid apps also, which you get a feeling of it. So let's see. Went over the exceptions, and one of the things that doesn't get installed, and we're probably going to change this in the future, is we have a new version of intrusion prevention. It doesn't get installed with the recommended apps. Let's see here, and I do recommend installing it manually. It's really well done. It does not block anything by default, but it does keep an eye on your network to give you flags to let you know that there might be an issue, and you have to investigate it forward. Intrusion prevention is a little bit of the magic crystal ball kind of idea. It's really hard to develop like artificial intelligence to figure out when something is a bad thing to do, because a lot of the web does non-standard things to really get around a lot of problems, and those may be thought to be, you know, intrusions, but if you look at them, they're pretty obviously it's an okay thing to do. So I do recommend installing intrusion prevention. Some of the other things kind of go over the GUI while we're installing all the apps. You have your network traffic ban up here at the top. It tells you how much traffic is going through your box. The host is kind of interesting. It shows you how many boxes are actually going through your Untangle for filtering. In this case, there's only one. It's a really good way to see, especially if you have a licensed product, to know how many hosts are behind your Untangle, and whether your license spanning is correct. The browser's a little oversized here, so I can't get to the edge here. Let's see here. The memory, of course, is showing how much memory it has. This will go up and down quite a bit. I've seen it fluctuate quite a bit depending on what you want to do. If you're filtering email, it's actually going to take quite a bit of memory because it's going to have to look at each email as it goes through. So just keep an eye on that. I would recommend starting off with 2 gigs of memory. It's usually a pretty good thing. Let's see what else. All right, so we're all installed, as you can see. So I'm going to go ahead and install intrusion prevention. This new version I would highly recommend. It works out really well, and it's definitely caught a few things in networks that I work with. As you can see, it installs a lot of the trial versions. You got 14 days to try them out. For some reason, if you don't decide to purchase that at the end of the trial or before, you can actually go into settings and then just remove the application. When you do remove the paid version, the let's see here, the free version will show up. Yeah. Okay, so this is the paid version. I just installed. Oh, I have to refresh this. There we go. And now I have the free version, so I'll go ahead and install the free version. And it just takes a few minutes. Let's see what I have here. Okay, so this actually brings up one of the good things here. Built into Untangle is alerts, and they will tell you if there's something really basically wrong with your box. In this case, it's pointing at an internal DNS server that I have, and it doesn't support spam blockers, DNS lookups for recipient's original email server, where we can look up and see if it's on a blacklist or not. In this case, my DNS server doesn't support that, so I get an alert telling me that it fails to do DNS blacklist lookups. So what I'm going to have to do if I want to get my spam filter to work correctly is I'm going to have to change my DNS settings, which is under networking. And I just need to change those DNS settings. So I'll probably change that at some future time. But at least it gives me a warning just to let me know what's going on there. Let's see, a couple things on intrusion prevention. It's actually not installed in the on, so I need to go through the wizard real quick to enable this. So I'll go ahead and go through the intrusion prevention wizard. I would recommend just taking all the recommended settings. It's a pretty good start, and it goes through it pretty quickly. So we'll take a few minutes while that's going. Let's see any questions here. Untangle does support OpenDNS. It's I don't remember if you're running spam, I would recommend not using that. What I usually recommend with people that have OpenDNS accounts is that they use that for their DHCP and do an override for the DNS, so it points at that instead of the Untangle. Let's see here. You show free and paid switch again. Sure. All that matters is I have to kind of wait for intrusion prevention. Basically, you just need to remove the paid application where you go into settings, and then at the bottom you click on Remove, and that will go back into the left side list of applications. And then once the paid application is not in the rack, the free version will show up. So you can just go ahead and install that. I'll show you that in a minute. Unfortunately, intrusion prevention setup does take a little bit of time because there's over 30,000 rules that have to be applied. Let's see. Let's see any DNS errors. I've had a variety of DNS error internal. Some clients are never able to clear that error. If your DNS servers are not supporting blacklists, it's kind of like driving your car with only 2 wheels instead of 4. So the spam blocker is just not going to be as effective. It still will block spam because it still has its internal rules for looking that up and scanning the email to see who it's from and the kind of content in the email. But obviously spam that comes from blacklisted sites are going to be not necessarily blocked, especially if it doesn't match any of the rules. So it's spam filter will work without the blacklist, but it's just not going to work as well. Okay, so someone was asking how to switch from paid to block. It's really simple. You just click on Settings, click Remove, and then install the free version. It's pretty simple to switch back and forth. Generally, we kind of made it where it's very difficult to have both paid and free web filter on purpose. You actually run into some problems on that. So we recommend that you only have one or the other, either the free version or the paid version. Obviously, if you have the paid version, I would recommend the paid version because it just has a lot better lists. The categories are more defined also. Let's see what's next. Customizations. We also went over alerts. There's a whole list of alerts, by the way. There's alerts if you're running too low on memory. There's alerts if you're running out of hard disk space. You can actually customize that alerts. There's a whole set. Anything that's in the database, you can create an alert to it. We have more information on the wiki on how to design your own alerts. Personally, one of my favorites, and it's one of the built-in alerts, is large downloads. I like to see if people are doing BitTorrent is really useful. Also, if they're doing a large download, that can kind of wreak havoc, especially if you have VoIP phones on your thing. So I like to make sure it's for business use. Let's see, email. So we'll show some of the customization. The other thing you want to actually put in there right away is your email address. If you didn't do that during the installation, I would go ahead and put your email for administrative. You get your reports. You're going to get any alerts emailed to you. Not only that you have the triangle at the top of the GUI, but you also have the alerts emailed to you. The other thing is, if you're using a public IP, you want to go ahead and probably put a valid host name. So that's the case here. You're going to put, let's say, this is going to be my demo Untangle, and let's say I've already changed the DNS. So my final host name will be demountangle.untangle.com, and that will refer to the IP address that I have in the front. Also here you can configure if you're using dynamic IP address. For example, you don't have a static IP address from your ISP, but you're getting a public IP address based on DHCP. That's really common with things like Comcast, Charter, most of your home services. They will provide a public IP, but it won't be static. It'll be DHCP. And then you can use something like dynamic DNS services to point at your address at the time for future. Let's see. And then the other thing that you want to customize once you configure your Untangle is go ahead and set up for reports. And then, as you know, I'm going to go ahead and say, I want the reports emailed to me. And I can also do online access if I want to give somebody access to the reports, but not allow them to make changes to the Untangle. Let's see. I won't save that for now. We can make our settings. The attachment limitation, you have to look at whatever mail services you're working at. You know, you really, a lot of email services have limitations on how big attachments are. I think, for example, if you're on Gmail, I think that's around 10 megs limitation. But, you know, depending on your mail server, it can be different items. Let's see what else. We went over host names. This gets into a little more advanced networking, but I thought I'd cover it because it's quite common. The other things you can do, for example, let's say you get more than one public IP address. You get, for example, a set of 5 IP addresses. Obviously, you don't want to have 5 untangles set up. So what you can actually do is add those other IP addresses to your Untangle. So it will answer to different public IPs. So let's say my provider gives me a public address of 25 and 26. So I'll go ahead and add that. So now my public IP address, public interface will respond to both 26 and 25. Now let's see what else. That's for aliases. Let's see what else we got. Also, as you can see with this one, I have multiple interfaces. So I'm going to go ahead and configure my wireless at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say this is going to be bridged to my external. We don't want external. We want our internal. I'm going to give it an idea of Untangle demo. We'll do some encryption. Give it a password. Do not put PSSWD as your password, okay? This is just kind of a test. And I'm going to go with the 5 megahertz. So I'll go ahead and interface. Oh, obviously it doesn't let me do that kind of password. So, okay, so now I've configured my other interface for wireless. So now I can connect to my Untangle using either a wired connection or the wireless in this case. Let's see if there's any questions here. Let's see, anything's here. Hardware recommendations, it's really kind of wild. It really depends on your network. You really have to look at how your network is set up, how many, we provide a pretty good guide on the wiki on that. If you're a business user and pretty small business, maybe 10 computers, probably something with an Atom processor. Again, I know we say 1 gig of memory, but from practical use, I would say at least try to get 2 gigs. I mean, the price difference between 1 and 2 gigs is almost minimal. Let's see, certain. Yeah, let's see. Okay, let's go to port forwards real quick. Yeah, let's see, we're done here. So port forwards, I highly recommend, if you don't have a huge knowledge of TCP networks, to use the add simple rule. It will cover 80% of the cases that you have. A common case is, for example, I have a web server behind my Untangle. So I'm going to want to do port 80, and then I will give it the LAN address of my web server in this case. Oh, that's 2. So I'll go ahead and click done and apply. Like I said, really use the simple. We've constantly answered questions on the forums about my port forward rule doesn't work, and people, we finally get people to post screenshots, and they end up, the rule is one of the most common mistakes is they put a source address. Source address is only if you want to limit who on the outside is accessing it. And let's say you only have one IP address that's going to access it. Generally, I recommend that you put destination local if you're going to do an advanced rule. And then you're going to do a destination port. For example, port 80 if you're going to do a web server, or maybe port 22 if you're going to need SSH access, or 3394 if you're going to do Windows Remote Desktop. And again, I'll just put the IP address of the box inside. If the destination port is already set and you're going to use the same port for the inside, you don't have to change that. If, for example, if I want to make it difficult for someone to hack into my box, I'll pick some other port, and then I'll say, oh, but I want it sent to the remote desktop port, and I'll click done, and we're okay there. So that's really the basics of port forwarding. I know that's kind of quick, and and so forth. Can you limit remote access to computer name instead of IP? No. You only have the outside IP addresses. So what you want to do is limit what IP addresses are coming in from their source. So, like for example, I have limits to a couple of my servers that I can only access from home or at the office. So only those IP addresses can access my web servers. That's the kind of things you want to do. Lastly, I know that was kind of quick on port forwarding. It's usually not something the average person will need. We actually have a pretty good breakdown on the wiki on how to use that. And again, if you have specific port forwards you want to do, please post to the forums. All the engineering is pretty active on the forums, and we're more than glad to help people out. One of the things, if you do have a question on port forward, definitely post a screenshot of your rule. That helps a lot, because it's kind of the old saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So you have your Untangle set up, you have a public address on it, and I want to administrate it when I'm not in the office. So one of the things that you can do is go to Advanced and Filter Rules, and by default, Untangle is not open to the outside. So you want to activate these two. I actually kind of went around and activated these ahead of time so I could show the demonstration. But these are the two rules that allow HTTP access to that. I generally don't recommend allowing SSH from the outside unless you have really strong password and you really have a reason for it. Generally, I access SSH through a VPN tunnel. But if you really need to, you can activate that. Also, allowing HTTPS on WANs will allow you to do the remote access. And this is actually the remote IP on this box, so you can see how I'm accessing it. Again, the password on your Untangle must be very strong and complex because I guarantee people will be hacking at your box trying to figure out your IP address. I'm sorry, not your IP address, but your password. Debugging. So this comes up a lot. It's like I have my Untangle set up. It's not filtering traffic. I'm not seeing any filtering. What I can do. The first thing I tell people is look at the host. Make sure that the box you're using to test your Untangle is listed. Here I have an IP address. I know this box is behind it. Second thing is take that box and generate some traffic. Things like news.google.com, CNN, those all generate traffic constantly. It's good to just open that page on the client and then look at your sessions. Here's my box right here. I can see it's generating all kinds of sessions for Google. Mozilla's doing it. It's got printer things. So I can see that this box is actually going through my Untangle and the filtering should work. If you're looking at the session viewer and you don't see any computer boxes behind it, you don't see any traffic, there's something wrong. Either the boxes behind that are not somehow connected to the Untangle, or the path that they're getting to the internet is not through the network that the Untangle's on. And you really have to start debugging that on your own network. One of the most common things is that the gateway, if you have your Untangle in router mode, the gateway address of your Windows boxes or whatever behind the Untangle do not have the gateway excuse me, of the LAN IP of the Untangle. The Untangle has to be the gateway. If you're in bridge mode, I find a lot of times people somehow have multiple paths to their firewall, and the path that most of the boxes are taking are not through the wiring that the Untangle has been set up in bridge mode. So you have to kind of go through that. So next, I've verified that my box is going through Untangle because I see it in the session viewer. And then next, I want to see if the blocking is working. So I'll go ahead and go to a site that I shouldn't go to. And then I'll look at my web filter and look at reports. And this will be, completely active and most recent traffic. It generates it on the fly. So it's almost instantaneous. So I'm looking at the box that's behind my Untangle. I can see that it tried to go to playboy.com and it was successfully blocked. So as you can see, I can see all the traffic that it's gone through. It's a really nice debugging tool. The new reports makes it so much easier to debug problems, especially whether things are being blocked or not. Especially if you're doing custom rules with sites using expressions. I highly recommend that. Some other debugging tools that are in the Untangle is under networking. And then I can go to troubleshooting. And for example, I can, I'm having problems getting to websites, so I'll check to see, if google.com is getting the proper DNS. So I'll do a DNS and successful. I do get the right IP address. I also get the IPv6 website. Some of the other things you can do a trace. I want to trace to Google, for example, to find out if I'm able to go there. I'll take TCP, I'll run a test, and it shows I can't get to google.com. So my networking is pretty good. And let's see what else. Let's go through some questions that some people have had here. Where can we see the total sessions and gigs for the new web filter? That would be, so we check this and then we go to our reporting. I think it's easier to just go through here. So we'll check on Web Filter Lite, we'll get the summary, and let's see. I think if you're looking at number of sessions, it'll be right here. So it's been requests. As far as gigs, I think it's one of the other. I don't think I have it installed. Let's see, bandwidth control here. Oh, here it is. I remember number of bytes. Let's see. I'll have to look that one up. I don't remember it offhand for total bytes. See what else here. What else could I see? Yeah, you can definitely know who's trying to access your website from the outside. There's two things. If you look at administrative logins, you can actually see who's logging in. I'm actually logging in internally, so it's not going to have any logins, but you would see login attempts here that were failed. The other thing you can do is look at intrusion prevention, look at the logs, and you would see attempts to port scan your IP address. I actually ran a port scan from one of my outside boxes, so you can see how it's detecting that I did a port scan on it.
All right, John, we're kind of running out of time here.
Okay.
So if you want to, yeah, thanks. So sorry, guys, if we didn't get to your question. We tried to get it to as many as possible. Again, just email us at support@untangle.com or sales@untangle.com if you have any questions in terms of differences about our appliances and the software. We're here to help. As John mentioned, we have our Untangle Wiki, which has user guides for all of our apps and also help with the installation configuration process that he already went through. Our Untangle forums, as John mentioned, you can ask any question. Our engineers will get on and answer it if you need some assistance, or you can look and see past questions that have been asked. So thanks everyone for joining today. Our next Tech Talks is on advanced networking. So if you want to take it a step further, for those of you who are advanced users and want to learn about advanced networking features that are available in our solution, this is the webinar for you. You can register for that on our website at untangle.com/webinars. Again, this webinar was recorded, so we will be sending that link out tomorrow morning. It will also be on the Untangle YouTube channel. So please just look for that email. Again, please email us for any other questions, and we appreciate you joining us today. Thanks, John, for the great webinar, and I hope everyone has a great day.